For us, it's 30th day of March 2013, a day that has seen former head of public service Francis Mudaura come out and tell Kenyans just how traumatic it has been for him ever since he was listed as an ICC suspect. Good evening and welcome. I'm James Marsh. And I'm Betty Callow. Well, it is also a day when the Court Coalition had their first victory in the bid to nullify the poll results, managing to get the IEBC and Safaricom to provide them with what they describe as key ingredients in their intended election petition. Also tonight, we will be speaking to Gladys Boscholet, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, on the plans that the Judiciary has for the county governments. But first, the highlights.
I'm not celebrating. The ICC case broke my heart.
Ocampo under fire, Mudaura's stake on ICC acquittal.
First round win for CORD as IEBC is ordered to provide election data.
We've decided to still prepare our officers anyway, so that the moment they are gazetted, all they do is count the number of days thereafter and then prepare for the ceremony.
47 magistrates deployed to the counties for election petitions.
And black smoke on day 2 signals longer wait for new pope.
Well, we start our bulletin tonight from the corridors of justice, and the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy CORD has won the first round of its poll petition seeking to compel the IEBC and Safaricom to release election data that it requires to challenge Uhuru Kenyatta's election as Kenya's 4th president.
While Safaricom made the agreement earlier, it would take the intervention of the High Court. In the case of the IEBC, the electoral body is also required to make available the same documents to the National Alliance United Republican Party, as well as the Attorney General, with the matter due for review on Friday.
Well, Wilkis Nyabo has these details.
Interested parties lined up at High Court Judge Isaac Lenaola's courtroom for the hearing of the application filed by Raila Odinga Secretariat head Eliud Owalo.
The Green Book was in attendance.
The IEBC was represented, as was Safaricom. These the two parties from whom Owalo was seeking vital documents intended for use in an election petition challenging the election of Uhuru Kenyatta as the 4th president of Kenya. But on this day, Safaricom would cave in, agreeing to provide all information that it could legally disclose. This would leave only the IEBC, which through its lawyer continued to register its objections to the petition to furnish Owalo with the documents, citing the amount of time and resources it would require to grant the request. In the face of the IEBC argument that some of the documents the petitioner was seeking were already available and in the public domain, Justice Lenaola gave the two sides 2 hours to sit down and deliberate. And when they returned, they had an agreement at hand. The IEBC agreed to provide CORD's legal teams with a raft of documents, which include Forms 34, 35 and 36, comprising results from across the country to be photocopied at CORD's own cost, software agreements subject to agreement by the firms contracted to provide the software during the elections, the files for all messages that were received through Safaricom from the tallying centers, the Green Book used to identify voters after the electronic method failed, the final voter register, and a copy of the final presidential results.
Who has that registered?
Both, there's a copy at our client and at the Registrar of Political Parties. Now, we are happy to provide that in soft copy, and they can do the printing for themselves. The reason is that the last time we had to print this for the elections, it took 7 days. To print it. It's a very huge document.
The National Alliance, the United Republican Party, and the Attorney General also sought to be furnished with the same documents, a request which was granted by the court.
Part of IEBC, do your best to give them what they want. On the part from Mr. Arwa, where there are difficulties, let's reach some agreement that would assist the matter move forward. Let's go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can deal with it as it should. Okay? Well, I thank you very much. Let's rise.
The parties now leaving the court to return on Friday for a review and further directions. Any person or party challenging the presidential election has 7 days after the election to do so.
It's a good decision because he has directed IEBC to furnish us with the information that we need. Everybody who wishes to audit the elections should be at liberty to study, scrutinize the documents, and then determine for himself whether the election was free and fair.
It is now a first-round victory of sorts for the petitioners. The question begging now is whether they will be able to secure all the information they require for the election petition before the deadline expires. Wilkis Anyabwa, KTN, at the Milimani Law Courts in Nairobi.
And that story brings us to a big question tonight, and we are asking, is court being frustrated in their efforts to challenge the election outcome?
It did. Send your brief comments beginning with a yes or no to our SMS number 8040, and we'll send you some of your comments at the end of this live newscast.
Indeed, and away from the courts now, the court top brass was meeting with candidates who won various elective seats in the just concluded elections to chart the way forward for the coalition.
Addressing the gathering, flag bearer Raila Odinga said the coalition will press on with the election petition at the Supreme Court and will be presenting substantial and sufficient evidence to show that the tallying process for the presidential vote was flawed. And as Patrick Amimo reports, the court leadership has urged its members of the various legislative houses to foster unity as the coalition strategizes to take control of Parliament, Senate and county governments during the election of speakers.
The CORD leaders meeting was called by CORD presidential candidate and Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Invited were all those candidates who had won the just concluded elections in the positions of MP, Senator, Women Representative and Governor. Even some who lost attended. The meeting provided a bonding opportunity for the coalition members. Top on the agenda was presentation on the key issues that have warranted CORD to go to court, having put together a team of eminent lawyers to challenge the results.
The evidence that we have in place is substantial. If ever there was a sham election, this one was a sham election in terms of the presidential election, particularly if I compare it to the year 2007.
There is no bigger duty to any Kenyan at this point than to ensure that the election, the first election under the new constitution, is interrogated to satisfy Kenyans.
Even one vote that has been taken away from us counts. Take it to our lawyers. Even one slip of the pen, fraudulent or deliberate, counts. Take it to our lawyers.
The CORD team says it will pursue its quest for justice and truth through the courts of law in ensuring that elections count.
If I don't speak now, then this thing is going to be institutionalized.
When we sing in the words of our national anthem, justice be our shield and defender, haki iwe ngao na mlinzi. If ever there was a time, a moment in our country's history where those words sound so relevant, it is now.
The CORD leadership held a closed-door session with members and strategized on winning positions for Speaker and Deputy Speakers at Parliament, Senate and county assemblies against their rivals in the Jubilee Alliance. And this, they said, would only be realized if the CORD family remained united.
Our staying together, that we will be able to raise the numbers to take key committees that are so pivotal if this country has to move forward.
They are actually now sending messages to some of our members of parliament, and more so from small parties, to convince them that if they join them, they will be given incentives.
The CORD leaders were urged to tell supporters at the grassroots to ensure peace and stability prevails as the alliance pursues justice in the courts. The CORD alliance has assured its members and supporters countrywide that it has enough evidence to prove that the elections were flawed. It has also stressed on the need to remain united, especially as the battle shifts to Parliament and Senate when it comes to the election of Speaker and their deputies. Reporting for KTN, I'm Patrick Amimo.
Well, we come back bearing good news. We have a new pope, as the pictures just behind us are showing white smoke from the Vatican. It has been, I'm sure, quite a hectic day for the cardinals, but finally we have a new pope.
Read that white smoke signifying that indeed the Sistine Chapel and all the cardinals have managed to choose one of their own to take over the mantle of the church, obviously taking off from Cardinal Ratzinger, the former pope, who resigned. We will be definitely waiting to hear. At this point, don't know who it is.
Do you think it's a black pope? Well, it's an African pope?
I'd like to believe that the African stronghold votes, showed up finally in the end. But we will know who that pope is until he walks into the St. Peter's Square, the cathedral, walks into that window, that famous window.
Yes.
We won't know who it is until that moment. So right now, what's enough for us to know is that we do have a new pope.
There we go, seeing some Catholics, I'm sure, who have been braving the rain and the cold, just waiting for that moment when they see the white smoke just emanating from the Sistine Chapel. It's quite a momentous moment for the Catholic Church.
Let's just listen in into that footage.
Organized religious institution. And remind us, we had a pope before we saw the smoke, right? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We've had a pope since that moment when one man got more than 2/3 of the vote, and he was asked, does he accept? Under the law of the Catholic Church, from the moment he says, I accept, he possesses what the law describes as full, supreme, and universal authority. In other words, Chris, he's the pope from that moment forward. And that's when they begin the process of burning the ballots. Yeah, that's right. After he accepts and he gives the cardinal his name, then the doors to the Sistine Chapel will be opened, or have been opened by this stage. Those helpers who have been waiting outside the chapel are then brought in. Some of them help the Pope get vested. Others, of course, burn the ballots and produce the white smoke that brings this incredible, dramatic news to the world. Haven't had a ballot Pope in over 100 years, right? Since they started the smoke. And we've got one tonight.
You'll want to stay tuned for the next 45 minutes to an hour, certainly, because within that time frame, we will see for the first time who the new pope is, what his name is, both his old name and the name he takes on as pope. And I can tell you right now, the tens of thousands of people in that square, many of them are calling up their friends and their family. Soon there will be tens of thousands more people heading to that square. I think I'm actually going to go down, head toward the square right now, and I'll leave our coverage in your hands. An extraordinary moment, both of faith and of history, are happening right now.
All right, so we'll talk to you when you get over there. Right now, Miguel Marquez is in St. Peter's Square. He's experienced this moment on the ground. Miguel, what's it like?
Well, it's freezing and it's miserable, but it's electric and exciting all at the same time. The bells, that we saw the white smoke, and then the big bells started to ring. There was just a massive tidal wave of sound that started from right near the basilica and then came back toward us. I'm here with some folks who came in for the conclave. This is Erin. How are you?
Hi, I'm Erin Saez-Hen of the Women's Ordination Conference, and I have Kate and Miriam with me from womenpriest.org.
And what is it like to be here?
It's a wild experience, actually, waiting for the Pope. We all here support the inclusion of women in the Catholic Church. You
have I should point out, you have your ordained women badges on.
Indeed, that's coming via CNN and the initial reaction on Twitter from Kenyans when that election had to go to a runoff. And indeed, Pope-elect, as they say. Let's move on now. And the former head of civil service, Ambassador Francis Mudhaura, says he will not be celebrating his acquittal by the International Criminal Court, as the entire Hague experience has left him heartbroken. Mudhaura, however, blasted the ICC prosecution for conducting shoddy investigations that saw his charges confirmed based on frivolous evidence. The former civil service boss is calling for a thorough re-examination of the remaining cases, saying an error in the prosecution's judgment could shatter lives of families. Samu Gina has that report.
Obviously happy to be off the ICC news, the former head of civil service, Ambassador Francis Mudhaura, is not celebrating yet. Mudhaura says the case almost shattered his life and is a traumatic encounter. He termed the narrative surrounding his committal to trial as a tragedy.
I'm relieved more than I can say. However, I'm not celebrating. The ICC case broke my heart, not only because I, Francis Mudhaura, was charged, but much more so because I have seen injustice abused and manhandled by those whose primary duty it was to respect it and safeguard it all at all costs.
If we come to this view,
Muthaura, whose case was withdrawn Monday after prosecution witness 4 recanted his statement, blasted the prosecutor for conducting a shoddy investigation, saying such errors risk devastating many lives. Flanked by his legal team led by lead counsel Karim Khan, Esa Fall and Kenya's Ken Ogeto, Muthaura challenged the prosecution to work competently.
Please investigate your cases. Please look for the truth and make sure that your staff live by this guiding principle.
The former civil service boss emotionally recounted that his naming on December 15, 2010 as one of the Ocampo 6 marked the beginning of his agonizing journey at the ICC. Muthaura's lead counsel faulted the civil society groups for projecting the ICC as a total tool for justice despite some of its shortcomings.
They should not be secret societies. They should be civil societies for the sake of the Republic and all its people. If they're true to their responsibility to the people of Kenya, to pause and not make a cacophony of noise about presenting heads on a platter.
Equally, ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda's predecessor, Luis Moreno Ocampo, was under fire for relying heavily on a single witness to commit his case to trial. Ocampo has been blamed for a sloppy investigation. A total of 13 prosecution witnesses have so far been dropped in both Kenyan cases.
The evidence should lead to the suspect. Any prosecutor who looks at who's well known in a country, looks at the celebrities and wants to prosecute the celebrities and then tries to find evidence that will fix them is going to be not only running up the wrong path, but is imperiling the very oath of office they were sworn to uphold.
Muthaura was facing charges of murder, deportation, rape, persecution and other inhumane acts along his co-accused President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta. But in dropping Muthaura's case, ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda claimed she had solidified the case against the President-elect. Now Muthaura was charged alongside President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta for masterminding allegedly a common plan. Now pundits are keen to see how the Uhuru case plays out in court with Muthaura out of the equation. Sam Ogina, KTN, Nairobi.
Thank you very much, Sam. Now let's stay with that story, looking at Muthaura's journey since he was listed as a suspect. Now, on the 15th of December 2010, after former ICC prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo had examined an extensive document compiled by the Working Commission in regard to the post-poll violence, well, he submitted an application to the ICC requesting the court to summon the 6 suspects. The pre-trial chamber reviewed the evidence and determined that there were reasonable grounds to believe that the individuals named had committed the crimes alleged in the prosecutor's application. Well, the request was therefore granted. Well, this saw Ocampo swing into action, and on 8th of March 2011, the summons were issued to Muthaura and the other 5 suspects. According to Ocampo, the evidence established was sufficient to charge Muthaura for crimes against humanity, as our graphics show, which include murder, deportation or forcible transfer of people, rape, other atrocious acts and persecution. To sum it all up, Muthaura was named as an indirect co-perpetrator. Well, moving on, what followed next was the initial appearance at The Hague on April 8th, 2011. This, if you recall, was the introduction of and familiarization of the suspects with which the court's procedure. Now, the confirmation of charges then followed on the 1st of September to 5th October 2011. Now, in both instances, Francis Muthaura was accompanied by his lawyer, Karim Khan. Well, following the confirmation of the charges on the 26th of January 2012, Muthaura resigned as the head of civil service. His trial was then scheduled to begin on the 11th of April this year, but you'll remember that that date was recently postponed to July 9th this year after a request was made by the defense team. However, on Monday, the office of the prosecutor came out and announced that it was dropping all charges against Muthaura, saying it had insufficient evidence for a conviction. It cited the loss of witnesses, including a key witness who had recanted testimony and claimed to have received bribes from defendants in that case. Well, that has been Muthaura's journey. Let's now move on to other news. As losers at the just concluded polls ponder their next move, the judiciary has deployed 47 judges who will be assisted by 47 magistrates across the counties in participation of election petitions at the county level. Now, the judiciary staff will also be responsible for conducting the swearing in of governors, senators, and women county representatives. Judiciary Chief Registrar Gladys Boss-Sholay, who presided over the staff training, says they are in consultation with the Transition Authority on a conclusive program for the swearing in of the county officials. Well, KTN's Eric Njoka reports on the judiciary's responsibilities at the county level as Kenya ushers in the new devolved government.
According to the new constitution, it will take only 14 days to handle any disputes arising from the presidential race. Disputes arising from other elective posts will take a record 6 months to conclude, and the judiciary is putting measures in place to ensure that these timelines are adhered to. Judicial officers will not go on leave until October to ensure speedy resolution of all disputes arising from the just concluded general election. Those hearing petitions will not handle other court matters until the disputes are determined under the Elections Petitions Rules 2013, gazetted on February 2013.
They are here to ensure that they get the briefing, collect all the oath books and all the documentation, and be told the drill of what they're supposed to do across the country, because we'll not have another opportunity to meet them. So they've come for the briefing, and they will brief the judges who are going to swear in the county governors.
They have been deployed to the counties to handle the swearing-in ceremonies, but first, the judiciary has to consult with the Transition Authority on the set date to swear the newly elected candidates in their respective governor, senator and women representative 10 days after the IEBC gazettes the list of nominees.
We've decided to still prepare our officers anyway, so that the moment they are gazetted, all they do is count the number of days thereafter and then prepare for the ceremony.
According to the pre-election report prepared by the Judiciary Working Committee on Election Preparations, chaired by Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, the judiciary anticipated that there could be up to 500 cases arising from the 2013 polls. The rules make provision for the scheduling of a pre-trial conference by the election court within 7 days of receipt of the last response to the petition that has been filed. Eric Njoka, KTN.
India, that story has been running side by side with a story that has just broken up a few minutes ago, and we have a new pope, as it were. The cardinals at the Sistine Chapel have elected one of their own as a pope. Up to now, we do not know who that pope is. We'll all be trying to figure out any moment now when that individual, that chosen cardinal walks through that window, that famous window to the Vatican, and that's only when we'll know who that pope is. But as of now, it's good for us to all know that indeed the cardinals, the 115 of them, have chosen a new pope. We will stay with that story, and while you're here, we'll be able to tell you who that is. But now, though, I'm joined by Gladys Boss-Sholay, who's the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, just to run through that story that we have been running for you. Gladys, good to see you. Massive exercise we're expecting here next week on Tuesday, talking about swearing in governors, 47 governors, county representatives, all the things. How will this just play out, Gladys?
Sorry, thank you, James, and sorry, I think you've got to repeat the question. I didn't hear you clearly.
All right, good to see you, Gladys. Massive exercise that you're going to conduct next week, swearing in governors, 47 governors, happening concurrently among other officials. How will this just play out for us? Just lay down for us, how will this play out next week?
We're just preparing, just getting ourselves ready. The governors will be sworn in 10 days after the gazettement, and the county assembly members will be 14 days after gazettement. So we're waiting for the gazette notices, then we will have specific dates. But meanwhile, all our officers after today are ready to undertake that particular responsibility.
Well, that is the question then has been, and some have asked, is this going to be a one-day exercise? Are we going to do all this swearing in just one day, or we have different separate days?
The swearing in of the governor is going to be on a separate day because it's 10 days after gazettement. And that gazettement, venue and time shall be gazetted by the transition authority. In the case of county assembly members, it's 14 days after gazettement. So you can see it will be on separate days. But that will be gazetted. The time and venue will be gazetted by the IEBC. So they will be held on separate days.
Guys, let me just bring you back to away from the swearing in. And we do expect one big petition from the presidential election that she's coming from court. They're promising, that they are going to, petition, send a petition anytime now. Is the judiciary ready, Gladys, to handle this particular case?
Yes, James, we are very ready. And you might have seen that way back, even as far back as 22nd of February, the judiciary did publish the guidelines about the presidential election petitions, which sets out the timelines very clearly. And in fact, the Supreme Court has unpacked it in great detail so that it is very easy for everybody to read. It's very clear from the law that one has to file the petition 7 days after the declaration of the result. And then thereafter, immediately it is filed at that time, then the registrar of the Supreme Court has to publish that petition within 3 days. And thereafter, the petitioner has to serve the respondent within another 3 days. And thereafter, the respondent has to file their response within another 3 days. That takes us to day 9. So on day 9 and 10, there will be a pre-trial conference. That is a meeting of the lawyers and the judges of the Supreme Court in order to narrow down issues, clarify what will be brought before trial, and so on. And thereafter, there shall be a hearing for 2 days. And after the 2 days hearing, then the Supreme Court will be ready to sit down and write its decision and be ready to deliver it before the end of the 14th day. So the time is very clear. It's 14 days, and the day hearings are going to be day to day until completion.
Just one final question following up on that. This is obviously, a legal matter, and obviously from here I just take, a legal precedent, if you like. In terms of the timing, we do know that's 14 days, and also a swearing in has been scheduled for the 26th. The Constitution actually lays that out. Do you think we're going to meet that 26th day of the swearing in, depending on what happens with this case? Or that is just a day that will have to be chosen after we get, the results of the Supreme Court?
I think what's happening, James, is that preparations are going on. Since at the moment there is no petition that has been filed yet in the Supreme Court, then the Assumption into Office of the President Committee is continuing with plans. But they realize that that date is a moving target, and therefore, if there is a date filed, a petition filed in court, they will immediately change their swearing-in date accordingly. So the dates keep changing. So if it will be on the 26th if there is no petition filed. But if there is a petition filed, then you know that if the petition is filed, for example, on, I think, let's say Saturday or Sunday, you just need to count 14 days thereafter, and then you should be able to know that they will be able to complete the petition by the 30th, which means you count the swearing-in ceremony will then be 7 days after the declaration of the Supreme Court. And if there is going to be another election, again, the law is very clear on the number of days we count thereafter. So everybody who's involved in the preparations is clearly aware that the dates may shift depending on when the petition is filed and if it is filed.
There's just one final question for me, though, Gladys. That is for the presidential election, but we do know and we do understand that some candidates from parliamentary level, Senate level, governor level say they are dissatisfied and they would be petitioning the court. They would actually be challenging those results. We do still wait to hear if those cases do come through. Is the judiciary prepared for that as well, to run concurrently with the presidential election, or how will that work?
Yes, it's only the presidential election petition, James, that goes to the Supreme Court. All the other petitions for county for governors and parliamentary will go to the High Court, and those that relate to the county assembly will go to the magistrates' courts. All our magistrates have been trained, all our high court judges have been trained, and therefore we are able to hear all the cases concurrently. So if there's an election petition, we will be able to hear it. If there's no election, if there's a presidential election petition, we will go ahead to hear it simultaneously with other election petitions. Although with those ones that will be held at the High Court, the date of filing is within 28 days after. So we expect them to come sometime at the end of April.
Gladys Bos-Shole, Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for talking to us and just giving us context and for shedding some light to some of our key questions regarding the petitions, presidential petition and any other petition that would be filed for any other level. Now, the Alliance Party of Kenya, popularly known as the Mbas Party, has pledged its support for the Jubilee coalition, saying it will work with them in and out of Parliament. Party leader Kiraitu Murungi said a National Governing Council meeting today ratified the relationship with the Jubilee, who have also expressed their willingness to work with the PK.
Good evening. It's the 13th of March 2013. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. Welcome to Blessed Business from, I guess, messages from the Purple Conclave. Now let's do business here. And faced with growing concerns of a revenue shortfall ahead of its full-year returns, the Kenya Revenue Authority is now asking the public to report any trader who fails to issue them with an ETR receipt. Here are the details.
Introduced in 2004 amid protests by a number of traders around the country, the Kenya Revenue Authority is now sounding alarm of a failure to comply with the electronic tax registers, popularly known as ETR. According to the authority, some value-added tax registered taxpayers are supplying goods and services without issuing the ETR receipts, contrary to the VAT Act. With this, the authority says the government is losing billions of shillings in lost revenue. As a result, it is now calling on members of the public to sound out such traders. Already, KRA is facing a collection shortfall only months to its full-year target. As at November 2012, KRA had missed its target by 45 billion shillings, largely attributed to the underperformance in value-added tax. The authority, in a bid to rally the public on its side, is also saying that the VAT Act imposes heavy penalties, including seizure and forfeiture of goods if payment of tax on such items is not proved through possession of an ETR receipt.
President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta today held discussions with members of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. In a series of strategic meetings he is holding, Uhuru, together with Deputy President-elect William Ruto, assured the business community of the government's full support in promoting the private sector. The discussions also centered on job creation for the youth as part of addressing growing unemployment in the country. Now, in a bid to grow its revenue stream, state-owned National Oil has announced plans to enter into the lucrative petroleum export business in the near future. Michael Karanja has more.
Limited avenues for expansion, local petroleum companies have had to make the East African region their new playing fields. State-owned National Oil joins the fray, hoping to cash in on the growing market mostly in Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The oil marketer, in a statement to media houses, says it plans to supply bulk petroleum products including fuels, lubricants and LPG to businesses and consumers in the East African market as it looks into the possibility of establishing retail presence in the countries. The firm has in the past focused mainly on the retail of petroleum products, but with diminishing government funding has had to develop new lines of business to grow revenue. Most recently, it threw in a bid to construct a parallel petroleum pipeline connecting Kenya to Uganda from Eldoret to Kampala. This is in addition to interest it has signaled in oil exploration across the country. Over the last 2 years, National Oil has established a number of business partnerships in East Africa, including South Sudan, and plans to actively participate in the petroleum export business. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
And Kenya's horticulture industry recorded a 3.84% fall last year in what industry officials attributed to weak European economy. According to figures from the Horticultural Crops Development Authority, seen by Reuters news agency, Kenya earned 87.71 billion shillings from the cultivation of fruit, vegetables, flowers and nuts in 2012, down from 91.22 billion in 2011. Horticulture is a leading source of foreign exchange for Kenya alongside tea exports and tourism. Flowers, which make up the bulk of the earnings, fetched 42.87 billion shillings in 2012, down from 44.50 billion in 2011. According to the report, and earnings from vegetable exports totaled 21.49 billion shillings versus 21.51 billion in 2011, despite bigger volumes shipped. Kenya exports most of its horticultural produce to Europe, where officials say economic weakness contributed to a decline in last year's earnings. Officials, however, are optimistic of a good run in 2013, largely benchmarked on the gradual improvement of the Eurozone as well as favorable weather locally. Now, let's take a look at how the Kenya currency is doing against the international currencies and also a look at financial markets. Well, from the Vatican, it's a night of blessings. I guess I should say the same. Have a blessed night. Nicholas Mudimba is coming up with sports.
And to some other stories, the Tusker Premier League defending champions left it late to take territory 1-1 in a midweek match played at the Nyayo National Stadium. The match was doubled up as Tusker's preparations for the match against Al Ahly in their continental tie over the weekend. Tusker will, of course, play the Egyptians on Saturday in the mine started early in the match, though they were wasteful up front as Ugandan import Robert Omunuk and Justin Monda's interplay caused panic in the Flower Boys' defense. Andrew Murunga capitalized on the Brewers' mistake to pick his top well in the 48 minutes gone. Robert Matano rang the changes, bringing in Michael Olunga for Khalid Aucho. 9 minutes remaining and the change paid dividends when Olunga combined well with Dunga to level the proceedings against the resistant Karuturi side. In the 90th minute, Karuturi Sports is now 7th on the log with 4 points, while Tusker displaces FC Leopards to go 11th with 2 points. And to Arsenal fans, you are leading 1-0, it's now 15 minutes. Moving on, the much awaited Athletics Senior National Elections will now be held on the 17th of April. AK defended its decision to postpone the election for another month, citing the just concluded general elections.
Athletics Kenya has changed its election date as a result of the just concluded general elections. The national elections will be held on the 17th of April. The county elections are scheduled for the 3rd of April, having been moved from the constituency level in what AK termed as lack of quorum. The regional elections will now be held on the 10th of April.
For an AGM to take place, we must have a minimum of 30 delegates. Unfortunately, most of the constituencies do not fall under that category. They have either 0, 2, 3 or 4.
The track and field calendar for Nairobi has also been changed and will now kick off this weekend at Kasarani. This effectively moves the Defence Forces Athletics weekend to the 15th and 16th of May.
Nyayo Stadium was one of the tiling centers, and up to now, it is not open to anybody. I think simply because some of the ballot boxes are still there.
After the Nairobi meet, the next field meet will be held on the 22nd and 23rd of March in Bondo. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
German football giants Bayern Munich welcome English football side Arsenal, and the match is going on right now. And of course, as I told you, the Arsenal side are leading 1-0 at the Allianz Arena. In fact, it's the home turf for Bayern Munich. Of course, tomorrow on Sunrise Live, I beg your pardon, and of course KTN Live at 1 or the news desk will be giving you all the results you want tomorrow. That's it for KTN Sports today. I'm Nicholas Mudimba. Have yourself a good night.
Nothing rewards like a Guinness. Guinness, reach for greatness.
Weather forecast brought to you by Motin Doom Power Guard.
The ultimate cockroach killer.
Well, indeed, that's where we wind up this edition of KTN Prime, which has been quite an eventful evening for the whole world.
Yes, basically, the Pope has graced our bulletin. It doesn't happen every other often.
Indeed, the new Pope, Pope Francis I, has been elected as the new Pope. He will be heading 1.2 billion faithfuls around the world.
Well, and as the Pope said, rest well. I'm James Smart.
And I'm Betty Kello. Thank you so much for watching. Let's do this again tomorrow.